Uh, oh, these hot summer days, my friend. The only thing in this studio except the air condition and our dogs is the awesome topic that we are going to talk about today. Sue, welcome to another episode of the Bark Brigade podcast by Dogzilla Magazine.
Thanks so much for having me back. I mean, it is definitely a hot one today, but I'm really excited to get into this.
Oh, for sure. So you probably think your dog steals your spot on the couch to assert dominance, right? Well, you are wrong. They are actually self-medicating with an oxytocin loop that is triggered by a highly specific thermal and olfactory imprint you just left behind.
Exactly. I mean, it is this profound biological response,
Yeah.
but it's completely disguised as a minor domestic annoyance. We look at a dog curled up in our seat and see this cheeky behavioral quirk.
Right, like they're just being a jerk.
Yeah, exactly. But we are actually witnessing thousands of years of evolutionary survival tactics colliding with complex neurochemistry.
Mind-blowing. So picture this, because it is a universal experience for anyone listening who shares their home with a dog. You have settled down for the evening. You have engineered the perfect ergonomic setup on the couch.
The pillows are perfect.
The pillows are perfect. The cushions are compressed just right. You are finally relaxing. Then you realize you left your water in the kitchen.
It always happens.
Always. You stand up, walk maybe 10 steps away, and by the time you turn back around, your dog has completely shamelessly claimed the exact geographic coordinates of your seat.
Oh, yeah. And they look entirely innocent.
Usually avoiding eye contact, right? Completely anchored to the spot. So we are going to deconstruct this everyday mystery today based on a great article from Dogzilla Magazine. We are unpacking the physics of heat transfer, the mechanics of canine olfaction, and the deep-seated pack instincts that drive this specific behavior.
And I think that's so important. By the end of this deep dive, you will understand exactly why that cushion takeover is happening, and why it has absolutely nothing to do with those antiquated, thoroughly debunked alpha dog myths.
Yes, thank goodness.
Which is a crucial paradigm shift. I mean, it really is. When we strip away the anthropomorphic assumptions about spite or dominance, we can actually examine the sensory reality of the animal.
Right, because they don't see the world like we do.
Exactly. We have to view the living room not as a human relaxation space, but as this dynamic environment of shifting temperatures, highly concentrated chemical signals, and established social hierarchies.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the most immediate, measurable physical change that happens the second you stand up.
The heat.
The heat. When you vacate a seat, you aren't just leaving empty space. You are leaving behind a significant amount of radiant body heat.
Yeah, you really are.
We are talking about a 98.6-degree mammal resting on insulating materials like foam, fabric, or leather. That spot literally becomes a thermal beacon.
It does. And to understand why a dog is drawn to that, we have to look at metabolic efficiency.
Okay, what does that mean in dog terms?
Well, dogs, like all mammals, expend a constant stream of baseline energy just to maintain their internal body temperature. So, in the wild, finding a microclimate that allows them to conserve that energy is a highly adaptive survival trait.
Oh, wow. So they're just being energy efficient.
Totally. When they locate a pre-warmed surface, they can essentially power down their own internal furnace. The environment is doing all the thermal heavy lifting for them.
It is the biological equivalent of somebody pre-warming your car seat on a freezing morning.
That is exactly what it is.
If you have the choice between sitting on an ice-cold leather bucket seat and generating the heat yourself versus, sliding into a seat where the internal coils are already blasting heat into the upholstery, the choice is obvious. It requires zero caloric effort on your part to be comfortable.
That is a highly accurate comparison.
Yeah.
And this drive for ambient heat, it's hardwired into their neurobiology from the moment they are born.
Really? Like from day one?
From day one. Neonatal puppies lack the ability to thermoregulate effectively. For the first couple of weeks of life, a drop in environmental temperature can actually be fatal.
Oh, that's so sad to think about.
It is. So they survive by instinctively seeking out the radiant heat of their mother and the collective body mass of their litter mates. That tactile sensation of pressing into a warm, yielding surface is neurologically, permanently linked to safety, survival, and just down-regulating the nervous system.
So the adult dog on your sofa is really just executing a deeply ingrained behavioral algorithm. Warmth basically equals life.
Exactly.
But if that is the case, why do dogs with heavy double coats, like, say, huskies or malamutes, still engage in this behavior? You would think they're already perfectly insulated, right?
Yeah, It is a really valid question. And it is true that a greyhound or a whippet, those breeds with single coats and very low body fat, will seek out that thermal jackpot with a lot more urgency.
Oh yeah, greyhounds are always cold.
They are tiny, heat-seeking missiles. But for the double-coated breeds, the behavior often shifts from purely thermal regulation to tactile security. This is where the physical architecture of the couch cushion comes into play. You aren't just leaving heat, you are leaving a structural depression in the upholstery.
The ergonomic dent.
Yes, the cozy dent. You sit in a spot long enough, the memory foam or the down feathers compress, and you create a mold of your own body weight.
Which is honestly super comfortable.
Precisely. That specific deformation of the cushion acts as a custom-engineered orthopedic bed. For a dog, curling up in that concave space provides lateral support for their spine and takes the load off their major joints.
Oh, so it's like a little hammock for them?
It is. It simulates the physical parameters of a dugout den in the earth. They do not have to expend the energy to circle, scratch, and trample the substrate to create a comfortable resting posture, because your body weight already did all the excavation work for them.
Plus, that concave shape probably acts as an insulator, right? Like, the physical depression traps the radiant heat you left behind, preventing it from dissipating into the ambient air of the living room as quickly as it would on a flat surface.
Exactly. It creates a localized microclimate. But while thermodynamics and physical ergonomics explain a large part of the initial draw, they do not fully explain the intense specificity of the behavior.
Right, because if it were just about heat and a comfortable dent, they would be equally satisfied with a heated orthopedic dog bed on the floor.
Which a lot of people buy for them.
Yes, yet they consistently bypass the expensive dog bed to claim the exact spot you just vacated. So to understand that, we have to look at the unseen chemical markers you are constantly shedding.
Yes, the invisible world of scent.
Right, because if I leave my spot and another human is sitting on the opposite end of the couch bathed in a warm sunbeam, the dog doesn't go to the sunbeam, they go to my empty spot. This brings us to the profound difference between how humans and canines map their environments. We map a room visually. We see an empty seat. Dogs map a room chemically.
The olfactory processing power of a canine is just staggering. A dog possesses up to 300 million olfactory receptors compared to our measly 6 million.
Wow, 300 million, that's insane.
Yeah. The portion of their brain dedicated to analyzing odors is proportionally 40 times larger than ours. So when you sit on a couch, you are continuously depositing a highly complex matrix of volatile organic compounds, sebum, sweat, and sloughed skin cells.
Gross, but fascinating. So from the dog's perspective, I am not just leaving a warm dent. I am leaving a dense, glowing cloud of my specific chemical signature.
Yeah, it must be deafeningly loud to their nose. It is a concentrated olfactory beacon, and it is vital to understand what your specific odor represents to their limbic system.
Which is the emotional center of the brain.
Exactly. For a well-adjusted, bonded dog, the scent of their primary caregiver is fundamentally intertwined with resource security, social cohesion, and emotional safety.
Which completely dismantles the idea of ownership or territoriality that a lot of people assume is happening.
Totally.
If someone is listening to this and thinking, no, my dog is definitely just being a jerk and claiming my territory because he stares at me when he takes my spot, we really need to look at the actual behavioral motivation. The dog isn't planting a flag to say, this is my house.
Not at all. That interpretation is just a projection of human ego onto an animal. When a dog curls up and presses their muzzle into the fabric where your scent is most concentrated, they are engaging in active emotional regulation.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, we know through endocrinological studies that exposure to a bonded human scent triggers a parasympathetic nervous system response in the dog. It physically lowers their heart rate and suppresses the release of cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone.
So they're literally calming themselves down with your smell.
It makes me think of how a human might use a loved one's belongings to cope with absence.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy. Like, if a partner is out of town, you might sleep on their side of the bed or wear their worn sweatshirt. You aren't trying to conquer their wardrobe, right? You are using the lingering olfactory cues to trick your brain into feeling a sense of proximity. You want to feel connected when the physical connection is temporarily severed.
That is a highly accurate behavioral analog. The dog is essentially creating an overlapping scent profile. By pressing their body against the area where your volatile organic compounds are most heavily deposited, they are actively blending their scent with yours.
So it's an invisible hug.
Yeah, an invisible chemical hug. In canine social structures, this blending of odor profiles is a critical mechanism for maintaining the integrity of the pack. It reinforces their inclusion in the family unit.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's push on this idea of the pack for a second. We are talking about modern dogs living in climate-controlled apartments, but their neurological hardware was forged over tens of thousands of years in the wild. How does this scent-layering behavior connect to actual ancestral survival mechanics?
Right, connects directly to the concept of resource guarding and spatial awareness. In the wild, canids, wolves, African wild dogs, holes, they must be hypervigilant about the perimeter of their resting sites.
Because a sleeping pack is vulnerable.
Exactly. The alpha pair, or the primary decision makers of the family group, typically occupy the most central, secure, or elevated resting positions.
So when I am sitting on my couch, right in the center of the living room, observing the entire space, the dog registers that spot as the strategic command center of the den.
Correct. The couch is highly valuable real estate. When you, the recognized leader and primary resource provider, suddenly vacate that command center, it creates a momentary vulnerability in the defensive perimeter.
Wait, really? Just by getting up?
Yep. The dog stepping into your spot is assuming a sentry role. They're anchoring themselves to your concentrated scent to monitor the environment until you return to relieve them of duty.
Okay, I have to challenge this slightly because it sounds incredibly dramatic when applied to modern domestic life. Guarding a den from a rival wolf pack in the taiga makes perfect sense, but my dog pulls this maneuver when I am literally just walking 10 feet away to grab the television remote. There are no rival predators in my hallway. Is a dog really conceptualizing a threat matrix when I step into the kitchen?
I get why that sounds dramatic, but we have to view it through the lens of object permanence and social cohesion.
Okay.
When you leave their immediate visual field, even just a step behind the kitchen counter, it registers as a microstressor. You are the locus of their world. When you vanish, the pack dynamic is momentarily fractured.
So it isn't necessarily that they think a bear is going to come through the front door. It is that the structural integrity of their social group has been paused, and they need a coping mechanism for that sudden absence.
Exactly. Assuming your physical position and bathing in your olfactory signature acts as an immediate buffer against that microstress, it is an active coping strategy.
Right.
They are self-soothing by utilizing the environmental tools you left behind. By holding down the fort in your specific spot, they maintain a continuous, unbroken chain of social order until you reappear.
That is wild. And we don't have to just hypothesize about this emotional regulation because
Mhm.
behavioral scientists have actually quantified it, right? We aren't just guessing that the dog feels comforted. Researchers have looked at the hard data.
Oh, absolutely. The scientific literature on this is fascinating, particularly the work done using functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI.
Which is where they scan the brain in real time.
Right. Researchers have actually successfully trained dogs to remain perfectly still inside an MRI scanner so they can observe real-time neurological activity in response to various stimuli.
And what happens when they introduce the specific scent of the dog's owner?
When a dog is exposed to the isolated scent of their primary caregiver, there is an immediate, pronounced activation in the caudate nucleus.
The caudate nucleus. Remind me what that does.
It's a critical component of the brain's reward system. It is really rich in dopamine receptors. This is the exact same brain region that lights up when they anticipate a high-value treat or play session.
Which proves that your scent alone, entirely divorced from your physical presence, your voice, or your body language, is inherently rewarding to their brain.
It is a highly potent biological reinforcer. And the researchers took it further with behavioral choice tests.
The cloth tests, right?
Yeah, they presented dogs with two resting options: a neutral cloth and a cloth impregnated with the owner's sweat and skin cells. Overwhelmingly, the dogs chose to settle on the owner-scented material. But the crucial data point wasn't just the choice. It was a biometric feedback after the choice was made.
Like heart rate variability, respiration rates, the actual autonomic nervous system metrics.
Exactly. When the dogs rested on the scented cloths, researchers recorded significant decrease in heart rate and a marked reduction in circulating stress hormones. The couch cushion is literally functioning as a highly effective, localized aromatherapy diffuser.
That is so cool. And researchers have also isolated the thermal aspect we discussed earlier too, haven't they? They completely removed the human scent from the equation to see how much temperature alone drives the behavior.
They did. By using heated resting pads versus ambient temperature pads in a sterile environment, they confirmed the consistent preference for the warmer surface.
Wow.
But perhaps the most compelling visualization of this phenomenon comes from thermal imaging technology applied to standard domestic furniture.
Yes, this is the part that really crystallizes the dog's perspective for me. If you look at a living room through a thermal camera right after a human stands up from a sofa, the visual contrast is stark.
It's amazing. The vacated spot glows brilliant red and orange against the cooler blue and green background of the surrounding upholstery. It is a massive, lingering thermal footprint.
So it's basically a big neon sign for them.
Pretty much. When you combine that highly visible thermal signature, which the dog can sense radiating outward, with the intense dopamine hit triggered by your concentrated scent, the spot becomes neurologically irresistible.
It is a perfect storm of positive reinforcement. And this leads us to the specific neurochemical driver of this entire process, which is the biobehavioral oxytocin loop.
Oxytocin. It's a neuropeptide that facilitates social bonding, trust, and maternal attachment in mammals. It famously spikes during physical affection between humans and dogs.
A love hormone.
Yes, the love hormone. But what we now understand is that physical contact is not strictly necessary to trigger its release.
So simply inhaling the volatile organic compounds trapped in the couch cushion is enough to cross the blood-brain barrier and trigger the oxytocin release.
Yes, it is. The olfactory processing centers in the dog's brain have direct neural pathways to the amygdala and the hypothalamus, which regulate emotion and hormone production. The smell triggers the oxytocin, which actively suppresses the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, basically the system responsible for stress responses.
And that creates the loop. Because the dog smells the spot, the oxytocin floods their system, making them feel incredibly secure and relaxed. And because that neurological state feels so good, the dog's brain logs the behavior sitting in your spot as a highly successful strategy for achieving emotional homeostasis.
Exactly. The behavior triggers the chemical reward, and the chemical reward guarantees the repetition of the behavior. It is a self-sustaining cycle of biological well-being.
Which is a beautiful thing. It means our dogs are utilizing our environment to keep themselves happy and calm.
Yeah, mostly.
However, we have to look at the other side of the coin. Because there's a threshold where this self-soothing behavior crosses over from a healthy, relaxed coping mechanism into a symptom of severe psychological distress. If a dog is heavily reliant on this oxytocin loop to function, we might be looking at clinical separation anxiety.
This raises an important question, and it's a critical diagnostic distinction for anyone observing this behavior in their own home. You have to evaluate the totality of the dog's body language and the specific temporal triggers of the couch stealing. It is the difference between a dog who enjoys a comfort resource and a dog who is desperately relying on a crutch to stave off a panic attack.
Let's break down those temporal triggers because they are the most obvious differentiator. A relaxed dog reacts to the availability of the resource. You stand up, the spot opens up, they take it. But an anxious dog reacts entirely differently to the sequence of events.
An anxious dog is constantly scanning the environment for predictive cues of abandonment. They do not wait for you to vacate the seat. Their sympathetic nervous system, the fight-or-flight response, is triggered the moment you initiate your departure sequence.
Like you pick up your keys, you put on your shoes, or you grab your coat.
Yes.
The moment those cues happen, a massive dump of adrenaline and cortisol hits their bloodstream. The couch spot ceases to be a luxurious choice and becomes a frantic attempt to ground themselves.
Exactly. And the physical manifestation of that internal chemical storm is very distinct. A relaxed dog who is simply enjoying the thermal and olfactory benefits will display fluid, lush body language.
Right, they kind of just melt into the cushion.
They do. They will circle once or twice, heavily drop into the dent, and you will often hear a deep autonomic sigh as they surrender their muscle tension into the cushion.
But the anxious dog doesn't surrender tension. They stockpile it.
Right. The anxious dog exhibits hypervigilance. They will often bolt to the spot and remain rigidly alert. They do not curl up, they brace. You will see a stiffened spine, closed commissures of the mouth, and very specific ocular signals.
Like whale eye.
Exactly.
For those who don't know, that's when a dog averts their muzzle but keeps their gaze locked on you, exposing the white sclera of their eyes. It is a clear indicator that they feel trapped between the compulsion to stay anchored to your scent and the panic of watching you leave.
We also look for piloerection. The raised hair along the spine, excessive panting when the room isn't hot, trembling, and dilated pupils.
And drooling, right?
Yes. If the sympathetic nervous system is fully engaged, you might also see hypersalivation or drooling.
Because the body is preparing for an acute survival scenario. diverting energy away from non-essential systems like digestion. And in severe cases, the article notes this can lead to inappropriate elimination.
Yeah, potty accidents near the couch or the front door,
Hmm.
which is a tragic reality of separation distress that is so often misdiagnosed as spiteful disobedience.
Oh, absolutely. People think the dog is mad at them.
Right, but a dog voiding their bowels near your favorite chair is not exacting revenge for being left alone. They have literally lost control of their sphincter muscles due to a catastrophic spike in acute panic. Punishing that behavior only exponentially increases the anxiety surrounding your departure.
So if someone is listening and recognizing these signs of severe autonomic arousal, the rigidity, the whale eye, the pacing, banning the dog from the couch seems like it would just remove their only coping mechanism and make the panic worse.
Banning them via spatial pressure or physical correction would be highly detrimental. Instead, the goal is to downregulate their nervous system by providing alternative, highly structured security zones.
Zones that still harness the power of your scent profile, but encourage independent relaxation.
Precisely.
The source outlines a few environmental modifications for this. One is introducing a cozy cave bed in close proximity to the sofa.
Yeah, the architecture of a cave bed is crucial here. It features a hooded canopy that physically encloses the dog on 3 sides. This mimics a subterranean den, significantly reducing the visual stimuli the dog has to process, which actually lowers their cognitive load.
Oh, that makes total sense.
And by placing it near the sofa, they remain integrated into the pack's core territory, but they have a fortified perimeter.
And to replicate the olfactory beacon of the couch cushion, you introduce a heavy dose of your volatile organic compounds into that cave bed. The suggestion is a blanket you have slept with, or a heavily worn article of clothing.
Right, you are systematically transferring the biobehavioral oxytocin loop from the shared furniture to their independent space. And we can compound that calming effect through the introduction of mastication.
Chewing. Like providing a high-value food puzzle or a long-lasting chew right before you initiate those departure cues.
The mechanics of chewing are profoundly therapeutic for a canine. The repetitive motion of the jaw muscles stimulates the release of endorphins and serotonin, which actively counteract the cortisol spikes associated with your departure.
Plus, it gives them a job to do.
Exactly. Demands cognitive focus, effectively distracting the brain from the anxiety trigger while simultaneously chemically self-soothing.
And the final piece of the puzzle for the anxious dog is our own behavior. We have to look at how our emotional state infects their emotional state. If we make our departures highly dramatic with a lot of extended eye contact, high-pitched vocalizations, and drawn-out goodbyes, we are basically validating their threat assessment.
You are confirming to their limbic system that an abnormal high-stress event is occurring. Similarly, if your return is marked by a frantic, highly aroused greeting, you are reinforcing the idea that your absence was a trauma to be survived, and your return is a massive emotional relief.
So we have to become aggressively boring.
Total emotional neutrality. Departures and arrivals should be non-events. You do not make eye contact. You do not speak to the dog for the first 5 minutes after you walk through the door.
Wow, that's hard to do.
It is really hard. But you wait until their autonomic nervous system has returned to a baseline resting state, and then you calmly offer affection. Over time, this systematic desensitization teaches the dog that your absence is a standard, low-stakes environmental fluctuation, not an existential threat to the pack.
It is incredibly relieving to know that with proper management, we can guide an anxious dog back to a state of emotional equilibrium. But for the vast majority of our listeners, the couch ceiling isn't rooted in clinical panic.
Thankfully, no.
It is rooted in comfort and sometimes a remarkable degree of cognitive complexity. Because dogs aren't just biological robots executing thermal algorithms, they have highly developed personalities and they understand operant conditioning just as well as we do.
Often better than we do, because they observe us with undivided attention. This brings us to the quirky, sometimes manipulative, and highly humorous motivations behind the behavior.
Oh, totally. Many dogs steal the seat simply because they have learned that it triggers a highly predictable, highly rewarding sequence of human behavior.
They treat it as a game. You stand up, they hop into the dent, you turn around, see them, and you react. You might use a specific tone of voice, you might laugh, you might gently nudge them.
Guilty as charged.
To dog, all of those reactions, even mild, playful scolding, qualify as high-value attention. From a cognitive standpoint, they recognize a cause and effect relationship. If I occupy this specific spatial coordinate, my human will immediately engage with me.
They have essentially trained you to initiate a play session on command. And you can tell when it's a game based on their physical posturing, right? The text points out that they might employ a playbow.
Yes, dropping their front elbows to the floor while keeping their hindquarters elevated.
So cute.
It is. And the playbow is a meta-signal in canine communication. It indicates that any actions following the bow are non-threatening and intended strictly as play. If they steal your seat and execute a playbow, they are demonstrating a theory of mind.
Like, they know they're being cheeky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They know they have done something slightly transgressive by taking your resource, but they are explicitly signaling that it is a joke.
It is an invitation to interact. But there's another social dynamic that motivates this behavior, which requires a bit of nuance to understand. The jealousy angle.
Oh yes, the jealousy angle. Canine jealousy is a well-documented phenomenon, though it differs structurally from human jealousy. Human jealousy often involves complex projections about the future or deep insecurities about self-worth. Canine jealousy is a much more immediate, pragmatic response to resource competition.
Right.
And in the domestic environment, the most valuable resource is your attention.
So if I am sitting on the couch petting the cat for 10 minutes and then I get up to go to the kitchen, the dog immediately takes the spot to manage that perceived competition.
Exactly. When you were petting the cat was depositing their own pheromones and volatile organic compounds all over your lap and your immediate seating area. The dog observes a rival, receiving the high-value resource. When the spot opens up, the dog occupies it to execute a strategic scent-masking maneuver.
They are literally overwriting the cat's chemical signature with their own.
They really are. They are physically and olfactorily reaffirming their bond with you. It is not an act of spite toward the cat. It is a request for reassurance from you.
That's actually really sweet.
It is. They are recalibrating the social hierarchy of the living room through scent deposition. A simple, calm, physical acknowledgement from you when you return to the couch is usually enough to satisfy that requirement and restore their sense of security.
Now, there's one more motivation discussed in the article, and it shifts the conversation away from behavioral quirks and into the realm of medical reality and the aging process. The dynamic of the couch takeover often changes dramatically when a dog enters their senior years.
It is a transition that requires a lot of empathy from the owner. As a dog ages, the physiological breakdown of their body significantly alters how they interact with their environment. The thermal and ergonomic benefits of your vacated seat are no longer just luxurious preferences, they become therapeutic necessities.
Right, because we are talking about osteoarthritis, the degradation of cartilage in the joints, and the loss of muscle mass.
Exactly. When a senior dog rests on a flat, unyielding surface, the pressure on their elbows, hips, and spine can cause acute discomfort. The cozy dent we discussed earlier, that concave impression left by your body weight, provides crucial orthopedic relief.
Because it cradles those compromised joints.
It cradles them. Furthermore, the localized heat trapped in that dent acts as a thermal therapy, increasing blood flow to stiff muscles and reducing localized inflammation.
So they are seeking out your spot for genuine pain management.
Yes.
But the aging process also degrades their sensory perception, which makes the olfactory component of your seat even more critical.
We see a high prevalence of cataracts, nuclear sclerosis, and age-related hearing loss in senior dogs. As their visual acuity blurs and their auditory world becomes muffled, their reliance on their olfactory system amplifies to compensate.
Because the world becomes a confusing, potentially frightening place.
It really does.
And amidst that confusion, the concentrated cloud of your scent lingering on the couch cushion acts as a lighthouse.
It is a highly specific, easily identifiable homing beacon. It guides them to the geographic center of safety in the home. It is a deeply poignant reality. The spot that smells most powerfully of you provides not just physical relief for their joints, but profound psychological relief for a fading mind.
Allowing a senior dog to maintain claim over that spot is a significant act of compassion.
It is the ultimate expression of the bond.
It fundamentally changes how you view the behavior. You aren't just losing your preferred angle for watching television, you are providing a critical navigational anchor for a dog whose sensory world is shrinking. But acknowledging that empathy, there are still practical realities to managing a household.
Right, you still need to sit down.
Exactly. There will be times when you simply need to utilize your own furniture, regardless of the thermal physics or the oxytocin loops occurring. We love the biobehavioral loops, but sometimes you just worked a 12-hour shift, your lower back is in agony, and you need to sit in your ergonomically perfected dent.
Completely understandable.
This brings us to the operational phase. How do we reclaim our designated seating without applying spatial pressure or shattering the trust we have built?
We have to utilize the principles of operant conditioning, specifically positive reinforcement, while aggressively avoiding any form of positive punishment.
Let's define that for clarity. Positive punishment would be physically grabbing their collar and dragging them off the couch, or physically shoving their body weight off the cushion.
Correct. Applying physical force introduces spatial pressure. It creates an immediate spike in cortisol. If the dog is occupying that spot because it provides a feeling of profound security and you suddenly use physical force to evict them, you have transformed their primary safety zone into a zone of unpredictable conflict.
Which severely degrades the human-animal bond and can easily trigger defensive reactivity.
Exactly.
So no pushing, no pulling. We have to convince their brain that abandoning the thermal jackpot is actually the most rewarding option available.
We do that through luring and the establishment of a reliable off-cue. You take a highly salient reinforcer, like a piece of freeze-dried liver, something with a potent olfactory punch that overrides the comfort of the cushion.
Oh, high-value treats are key.
Yes. You place it directly in front of their nose to capture their focus, and you slowly draw it away from the couch, guiding their muzzle and consequently their body off the furniture.
You are creating a dopamine prediction error. They think the couch is the best thing happening, but suddenly the promise of the high-value protein becomes more compelling. And as they follow the lure, you introduce the verbal marker, off.
And the critical mechanical rule here is timing. You do not release the reinforcer while they are halfway off the couch. You deliver the reward only when all four paws are firmly planted on the floor.
Right, marking the completion of the transition. But if we just put them on the floor, the thermodynamics are against us. The floor is cold and hard. We have to provide an alternative resting site that competes with the physics of the couch cushion.
Environmental management is key here. If you want the behavior to extinguish, the alternative must be of equal or greater value. The text suggests utilizing a donut-style bolster bed.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, the raised edges of the bolster bed replicate the lateral support and the concave structure of the couch tent,
But it still lacks the olfactory beacon and the radiant heat.
which you can artificially engineer. You bridge the olfactory gap by taking an unwashed article of your clothing, like a t-shirt you wore to the gym, something heavily saturated with your volatile organic compounds, and securing it under the cover of the bolster bed.
So you have instantly transferred the biobehavioral oxytocin loop to the new location.
Exactly. And for the heat, you can utilize a microwavable thermal disk, slipping it under the bedding to replicate the radiant heat signature you leave on the couch. You basically build a superior, custom-tailored nest right next to the sofa.
And by placing it immediately adjacent to the sofa, you satisfy their drive for social cohesion. They remain within the pack's core defensive perimeter.
Yes. Finally, you employ intermittent variable reinforcement. You randomly drop high-value treats into that bolster bed throughout the day when the dog isn't looking.
So the dog periodically wanders over to their bed and discovers magic snacks.
It creates a tremendous positive association. The bolster bed becomes an autonomous zone of high reward, which organically diminishes the magnetic pull of your vacated seat on the couch.
It is brilliant, friction-free management. Now, before we conclude, we need to address a final overarching concept that ties all of this together. We mentioned it briefly at the beginning, but it requires a definitive scientific explanation so listeners can completely discard it once and for all. The dominance theory.
Yes, the alpha dog dominance hierarchy model of canine behavior.
For decades, popular media and a certain subset of trainers insisted that every time a dog walked through a door before you or took a higher physical position on a piece of furniture, they were executing a Machiavellian plot to usurp your authority and become the alpha of the household.
It is one of the most pervasive and damaging myths in the history of animal behavior. That entire theoretical framework was based on observational studies of captive wolves in the mid-20th century. Studies conducted by scientists like David Mech.
Right.
They observed groups of unrelated wolves thrown together in artificial enclosures and witnessed intense, violent struggles for resources and status. They labeled the victor the alpha.
But those weren't natural pack dynamics.
Not at all. It was the equivalent of studying human psychology by exclusively observing inmates in a maximum security prison. When researchers, including David Mech himself, later studied wild wolf packs in their natural habitats, they realized they had been entirely wrong.
Wow.
Wild wolf packs operate as familial units, parents and their offspring. There is no violent struggle for dominance. There is simply parental guidance.
And beyond that, dogs are not wolves. They have undergone tens of thousands of years of domestication, selecting for traits of cooperability and interspecies bonding.
Exactly. Modern canine behaviorists unequivocally reject the dominance model as an explanation for mundane household behaviors. Your dog stealing the warm dent on the couch is not a status play. It is a complex interplay of thermoregulation, olfactory processing, emotional self-soothing, and a desire for social proximity.
So viewing it as a dominance struggle just creates an adversarial relationship where none exists.
Exactly. It forces the human to constantly engage in unnecessary conflict to prove their leadership, which only elevates the dog's cortisol levels and erodes trust.
True leadership in a mixed species household isn't about rigid dictatorial control over seating arrangements. It is about controlling the resources predictably, communicating clearly, and understanding the biological needs of the animal.
Which includes the flexibility to sometimes simply yield. The final point we should touch upon is the value of compromise. Consistency is vital in behavior modification, but rigidity can be counterproductive.
Right, there are acute scenarios where the strict enforcement of the off-cue should be suspended.
Absolutely. If a dog is experiencing acute physiological stress, perhaps recovering from a veterinary procedure or shivering during a severe thunderstorm, their need for the intense security provided by the biobehavioral loop of your couch spot supersedes the household rules.
In those moments, letting them retain the spot isn't a failure of training, it is a calculated application of empathy. You are recognizing that their nervous system requires the specific neurochemical cascade that your scent and heat provide.
Yielding the space in those scenarios reinforces the foundation of trust. The dog learns that while boundaries exist, the ultimate function of the pack structure is mutual support during times of vulnerability.
That makes total sense.
They will willingly relinquish the space under normal conditions because they know that when they are truly in distress, you will prioritize their well-being over your own convenience.
It transforms the living room from a battleground for territory into a shared ecosystem of comfort and security. Well, we have covered an incredible amount of biological and behavioral ground today. We started by examining the sheer physics of the couch cushion, the thermodynamics of radiant heat transfer, and the ergonomic benefits of the compressed upholstery.
We moved into the staggering complexity of the canine olfactory system, exploring how the volatile organic compounds you leave behind serve as a chemical anchor, providing a parasympathetic nervous system response that lowers heart rate and stress hormones.
We looked at the ancestral roots of the behavior, how modern dogs still conceptualize the living room as a den requiring a sentry when the primary leader steps away, mitigating the micro-stress of a fractured pack dynamic.
We reviewed the neuroimaging data, confirming that the caudate nucleus lights up in response to the owner's scent, triggering a self-reinforcing biobehavioral oxytocin loop. We differentiated that healthy self-soothing from the hypervigilant sympathetic nervous system overdrive of true separation anxiety.
And we broke down the pragmatic solutions, creating dopamine prediction errors through positive reinforcement luring, engineering synthetic comfort zones with heat discs and worn clothing, and completely abandoning the toxic alpha dog mythology.
It fundamentally reshapes how you perceive a profoundly common interaction.
It really does. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to pose a final, slightly provocative thought based on the neurochemistry we have been discussing. We have spent the last hour meticulously detailing how the dog benefits from this interaction, how the thermal imprint and the scent signature trigger their oxytocin release and downregulate their stress.
The one-way transfer of biological benefit.
Exactly. But let's look at the human half of the equation, because when you walk back into the living room with your glass of water and you see your dog curled up in your exact spot, looking up at you with those soft eyes, what happens to your internal chemistry?
That is a fascinating inversion.
You feel a spike of fond exasperation. You smile, your breathing slows, you reach down to give them a scratch behind the ears. In that moment, your own hyperthalamic pituitary adrenal axis is being suppressed. Your own brain is releasing a surge of oxytocin in response to their physical presence and their clear display of attachment.
The visual stimuli of the resting dog triggers the exact same neurochemical cascade in the human brain.
So perhaps the couch takeover is not just the dog utilizing the environment to self-medicate, it is actually the catalyst for a mutual, bidirectional biobehavioral loop. By stealing your seat, they force an interaction that chemically heals and relaxes both the human and the hound simultaneously. It is a synchronized biological event.
That is a brilliant synthesis. The disruption of your physical comfort results in the elevation of your emotional homeostasis.
And that is a trade-off I think any dog owner is willing to make. Thank you for listening, Dear Brigadiers, and if you have any questions, visit the source article on Dogozilla magazine at doggozilla.com. That was all for this episode, and until the next time, bye to all listeners of the Bark Brigade podcast.